Alright, and welcome to our last section of 1-5, simplifying difficult linear functions. So let's take a look at example 1. What if I told you, hey, I want you to graph this function? Well, you would look at it and you say, hey, I know the y is by itself, but this is not super clear on how to get it into the form y equals mx plus b. So we want to look here on this right side, and we want to simplify. Now, how are we going to do that? Well, the first thing we'll start by doing is distributing. So we'll have y equals negative 3 times 2x, which is negative 6x. And of course, that's why you should always keep your phone on silent. My apologies. And negative 3 times positive 8, which would be negative 24. Now notice this negative 3 won't multiply with that negative 4, so I'll simply drop that down. And now from here, I ask myself, can the negative 6 combine with anything? And I don't see any more x terms, so I'll just drop it down as y equals negative 6. But here we have negative 24 minus 4, which will of course become negative 28. Now what would this look like as a graph? Now I'm actually going to use more of my rough draft graph, to be honest, because I don't want to count down 28 units. So I'll simply say this. Here is negative 28, and then this value of negative 6, we know that it is negative, so it is decreasing. And I'm just going to kind of draw myself a rough draft graph like such. Okay? Let's go ahead and move on to our next example. Alright, here we are in example 2. And let's make this a little bit trickier. Let's do something like this. Negative 3 parentheses. Oh, how about 2/3 x minus 6y plus 2x is equal to 12. Now this should look pretty difficult right now, but let's go ahead and talk ourselves through it. The first thing we want to do if we want to graph this is we want to get y by itself. And the way we're going to do that is by simplifying the left-hand side. So I can multiply negative 3 times 2/3 x. Now remember, we actually have a cool little trick here. When our whole number is the same as the denominator, they essentially cancel. And so we're left with a negative times 2, so negative 2x. Here we have negative 3 times negative 6. We know that negative times a negative is a positive, and of course 3 times 6 would be 18y. Now this negative 3, does it multiply by the 2x? The answer is no, because it's not inside the parentheses. So I drop my plus 2x is equal to 12. From here, I'm still going through my questions. Can I simplify the left side? Of course, negative 2x plus 2x. Oh, wait a second. That actually forms a 0 pair. Those go away. And we have 18y equals 12. Now from here, how would you get rid of the 18? Well, we'll divide both sides by 18, and we'll get y equals, and we want to ask ourselves, what values can both 12 and 18 be divided by? I would encourage you to pause the video and ask yourself, what number can they both be reduced by? And of course the answer is 6. 12 divided by 6 would give us 2, and 18 divided by 6 would give us 3. Now how in the world would you graph something like this? Well, if there's no x value, if there are only y values, we actually just go here on the y-axis where we have 2/3. That's just a height, that's a value. And then you would just draw a flat line. So this is what you have when you have no slope. So if there's no x, there's no slope. Let me write that. No x means there's no slope. It's a flat line. And so you just go to where your y value is equal to 2/3. Alright, let's go ahead and do one more example. See what I can come up with off the top of my head. And here's going to be our example 3. And let's make this kind of crazy. Like really and truly. You've made it to the last of the lesson. Let's go wild. Let's do this. Let's do 1/3 parentheses negative 9x minus 12y plus 6 is equal to 5y minus 2x. Oh man, this is brutal. I'll be honest, I don't think I ever gave any students last year something this difficult. So if you can do this, you are going to be fantastic. So let's get started. Here we have our 1/3 times negative 9. We know that we want to simplify that left side. I can write that as negative 9 over 1. I can write this as negative 12 over 1. And when I do my top times top, 1 times negative 9 will be negative 9 over bottom times bottom, 3 times 1 will be 3, and of course I put my x. Here I've got 1 times negative 12, that's negative 12 over 3 times 1, that's 3y, plus 6 is equal to 5y minus 2x. Okay, now let's do a little bit of reducing. Negative 9 can actually be divided by 3, which is pretty handy. So we have negative 3x, and negative 12 over 3, well, that actually becomes negative 4y plus 6 equals 5y minus 2x. Now notice, I actually want to get my y value by itself, so when I get to my next level of questioning, are my variables on the same side? The answer is no, but I want to start by moving the letter that I want to get by itself first. So since I see this negative 4y is the smaller of the y's, I will plus 4y plus 4y. And of course, now we're going to have this. We're going to have negative 3x plus 6 is equal to 9y minus 2x. Now I'm going to give you a second to start writing down the notes here, or finish taking the notes if you have. And I'm actually going to need to kind of give myself just a little more room to work here. Just a little bit more room. And I'm not going to do the best erasing job because I want to go ahead and move forward pretty quickly. And I really want you to start mastering kind of some ideas for YouTube. Being able to skip ahead, being able to pause when necessary. So we have negative 3x plus 6 is equal to 9y minus 2x. Now the next thing we know, since the y is here, we want to get rid of this minus 2x, so plus 2x plus 2x. And negative 3x plus 2x will of course give us x. Negative x. Plus 6 is equal to 9y. Now from here, to get the y by itself, we should divide every single thing by 9, and just really clarifying this up, like really making this super, super simple. I'm going to take my y value and I'm going to rewrite it on the left-hand side, because that's where our y should always wind up. And we know this is negative 1x over 9, so I can write negative 1 over 9x. And right here, plus 6 over 9, I know they can both be divided by 3, which will give us plus 2/3. Now this is arguably one of the hardest things that you probably had to graph, so here's what I'll do. I will say, here's the value of 1 on the y-axis, but we know that 2/3 is just a little bit less than 1, so I'll put my starting point right there. And we have this slope, negative 1 over 9, which means we're going to go down 1, so that's just a little bit below the axis. We're going to go to the right 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. We'd wind up right there. Or we could do the exact reverse. We could go up 1 and to the left 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And of course now we can graph our line perfectly. Alright, I know those last two were pretty wild examples, but I hope this helps, and I'll see you guys in our very next lesson.